Welcome everyone to Brew Reviews. It's Brian here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we're checking out a beer that doesn't need much of an introduction. I'm of course referring to Budweiser. Coming to us from Anheuser-Busch, this brew is arguably the most well-known American lager, and you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who hasn't at least tried this beer once. Similar to Miller Lite, Budweiser has had some amazing commercials over the years. Now, yes, I agree, some of the commercials can get really annoying, like those ones from the 90s, the "What's up?", which started a whole craze that annoyed the hell out of everyone, but still, there are some classics in there. Another interesting fact for gamers out there is that Budweiser was featured heavily in the Tapper arcade game. Now, when it was eventually ported to home consoles, they obviously got rid of beer since they didn't want to market it to children, but still, for having such a major beer targeted to such a popular arcade game of the time, that speaks volumes. Let's not even forget the fact that Tapper used the Budweiser theme throughout the game. It should be noted that there is a pretty interesting history to Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser, but I'm not really here to give you guys a history lesson, so let's start looking at the beer. So Budweiser is available year-round, and it comes in at 5%. As far as the style is concerned, I know some people may consider this an American adjunct lager because of the inclusion of rice in the ingredients, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to stick with the classic American lager. When talking about the label, I think it's always important to address a beer that's been around as long as Budweiser. And to be honest, this beer has maintained the general style since 1936, which whether you like it or not, that's kind of impressive. While I can appreciate tradition and keeping a logo so similar for so long, I gotta be honest, the general design tends to be a little boring to me. Now, the fact that this is a red can really makes it stand out from the crowd, and I'll be honest, when I think of the color red in beer, my mind goes right to Budweiser, as I'm sure many other people feel the same way. But going a little more in depth, the actual font, the silver contrast against that bright red, it makes it look unique, and as you turn the can and you see that classic bow tie Budweiser logo, this is another iconic beer logo, and it's what you think of when you think of beer cans, similar to Miller Lite. So, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. It's above average, just doesn't knock my socks off. Now, the suggested type of glass to use for a beer like Budweiser or any American lager is going to be a pint glass or a Pilsner. For the purposes of this review, I primarily used a Pilsner glass, but as you can see, I also tried it out in a pint from the can. I've tried this beer many ways. Now let's get pouring. Unfortunately, like most major American lagers, the aroma is the weakest part of this beer. And I'll be honest, I'm not getting much of anything. The most you're going to get from this beer is a clean malt smell, and I don't really get anything from the hops, but they should have put something a little more aromatic in there, and usually that can come from your hops, so I question what was used when brewing this beer. I've tried to get a good aroma from the can, from a bottle, Pilsner, pint, you name it, I've tried it, and really there's just not much here. So I could only give it a 1 out of 5. There is something faint there, but it's nothing special, and it dissipates really fast. The best way I can describe this taste is one of the most bare bones beer flavors you can experience, as you get that slight hint of malt with a really clean finish. There's almost zero spiciness from the hops or any kind of real bite to this beer. It just tastes like a regular beer. I would have even appreciated a little bit more sweetness with your malts, but since they use rice, I feel like that probably takes away from the beer, and unlike Miller Lite, which uses corn, which added to the sweetness, you don't have much here. I will say the taste does remain consistent even as this beer warms, not suggesting you try it that way, but still, I could only muster up a 1.5 out of 5. Anyone that would suggest there's more flavor here than that probably hasn't tried a lot of beer. And now we come to the experience of this beer. As I mentioned, you can try this being poured in a pint glass or a Pilsner glass, and when you pour it, you do get a very crystal clear golden color. It has the slightest amber hue to it, but still, I would describe this just as golden clear. The lacing, once again, is pretty prominent, and the head dissipates fairly fast. It's that sea foamy froth that you get from a lot of these American lagers. My biggest suggestion, if you are going to drink this beer, is actually just get it straight from the tap or out of the can cold. while it does go down smooth and it has that clean finish that doesn't really leave a stale taste in your mouth, it actually sits pretty heavy, and considering the fact it's only 5%, I don't know if it's worth it to only have 2 or 3 of these beers and start getting that full feeling in your stomach. So I had to give it a 3 out of 5. It does have that clean finish, and it does go down easy, but man, once it starts sitting in your stomach, it's going to give you some issues. Overall, similar to the Miller Lite, this is what I think of when I think of a standard American lager. It's definitely not great, doesn't offer a lot of aroma or flavor, but it's fine in a pinch. The biggest thing that holds this back from being better than standard is just how heavy it sits with the lack of flavor to back it up. So when it comes to my overall score, I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 5. This is just standard beer. It's not good, it's not terrible, it's just meh. So when I input all my numbers into my drunken calculator, the total adjusted score for this beer comes in at 2.0. Now, once again, I'm the most critical of this beer as compared to Beer Advocate and Untapped. I'm always going to critique beers a little bit more severe than the average person who's going to rate a beer, especially like Budweiser. You shouldn't really bitch about this beer too much because it's meant for mass production, and for people who don't like hops or too strong of a beer, this is a fine beer if you just want to sit back with some buddies, drink around a fire pit, and just bullshit. When it comes to game pairing, I'm actually going to go with Battlefield 3. I really love that game, and to me, that was the breakout game for the Battlefield series. I know diehards might argue with me on that, but still, it's a great game, and a game like that requires a beer that you can drink a lot of, but not get too drunk, but still isn't going to force you to go to the bathroom all the time. That's why that perfect 2 to 3 beer ratio when you're sitting down for a couple hours playing this game, it'll always work out in your favor. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly.